Ready to tango?
Tango.
Well, sort of. Today we're diving into Dancing Our Way to Human AI Consciousness. It's by Carlos Goga.
Oh, interesting. I've heard of this one.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah, it's been creating some buzz.
It's not your typical, AI is going to take over the world book.
Right.
It's more about like how do we become better humans, in this age of AI?
Which is a question I think we're all kind of grappling with, right?
Totally.
Like it's one thing to say, oh, we need to be better, but how do we actually do that?
Exactly. And that's where Goga's book, I think gets really interesting. He uses this whole dance metaphor to kind of break it down.
Dance metaphor, huh? That's intriguing.
Yeah, I know. I was a little skeptical at first too.
Yeah.
But he really makes it work. Like he breaks it down into these 5 parts.
Okay.
He's got the dance floor, the dancer, the attitude, the footsteps, and the tango.
Okay.
And each one kind of reveals something about how we can approach not just AI, but our own, personal development and growth.
Okay, so where does he start?
So he starts with the dance floor, which I think is a great place to begin because he's not talking about like a literal dance floor.
Right.
He's talking about this new way of seeing the world.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like technology, human consciousness, purpose. It's all like intertwined now more than ever before.
Yeah, that interconnectedness is definitely a key theme these days, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. It's like AI has like ripped open the walls of our usual dance studio and kind of thrown us onto this massive, ever-changing stage, right?
I like that. So we're not just waltzing in a ballroom anymore.
No. And the thing is, we can't just stand on the sidelines, can we? Like, we have to participate, which is where the dancer comes in.
Right.
That's us.
Okay, so how does he define the dancer in this context?
So the dancer is you, the listener, right?
Okay.
You're not a bystander in this equation. You're an active creator. You're shaping this dance through every interaction you have with AI and the world around you.
So no more doom scrolling about the robot uprising.
No, exactly. We actually have to participate in how this all plays out,
Yeah.
Take some responsibility.
Take some action. Okay, so if we're the dancers on this ever-changing dance floor, what's the attitude we should be bringing to the dance?
That's a great question because that's literally his next point, the attitude. And he argues that like ethical alignment and what he calls conscious love are crucial.
Okay, so not just going through the motions, but really being intentional about it.
Exactly. It's not enough to just know the steps, right?
Yeah.
To have the technical skills, we have to actually approach this whole thing with the right intention.
Or right mindset.
Yeah, the right mindset. It's like, you can be a technically brilliant dancer, but if you're not present, if you're not connecting with your partner, the dance it falls flat.
Right.
No one's enjoying themselves.
It's all about the connection.
Exactly.
Okay, so we got the dance floor, the dancer, the attitude. What about the actual steps?
Right, the footsteps.
Yeah.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Each step, represents a choice, an action we take in our lives.
Okay.
Like, are we moving toward a more conscious way of being, or are we stuck in old patterns?
I see. So each step is a decision point, a chance to move in a new direction or stay stuck.
Totally. Yeah. And it's about recognizing that every decision, every interaction, it has an impact.
Right.
It's like in a tango, every step you take influences your partner's next move and vice versa. It's this constant, interplay. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So are we at the tango part now?
Well, yeah. That's kind of the ultimate goal, right? The tango.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So the tango is all about achieving this balanced, harmonious partnership with AI.
Okay.
It's not about like control or dominance. It's about this, intricate, ever-evolving dance where both partners, enhance each other.
I notice he uses the tango specifically, not a waltz or a foxtrot.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, why the tango?
Because it seems to me that it speaks to this need for adaptability.
Yes.
For improvisation, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to be present and responsive to your partner's movement.
Exactly. Yeah. There's like you have a plan, but you're also ready to
to adapt.
To adapt in the moment.
Yeah, to flow.
Yeah, to flow. But it all hinges on us becoming better humans, right?
Which, let's be honest, can be a lifelong dance in itself.
Oh, totally. And this is where things get really interesting because Goga, he dives deep into the power of meditation,
Okay.
but not just, in the traditional sense.
Okay, not just sitting on a cushion emptying your mind.
Not just that. He tells this great story. I don't know if you've heard this one, but it's about a disciple and a camel.
No, I haven't heard this.
Okay, so this disciple, he sets his camel free and then prays for its safety.
Okay.
Right, like trusting,
Trusting in a higher power.
yeah, but the master comes along and says, trust in Allah, but first tie the camel.
Okay, I like that.
Right, like it's this idea that
You have to take action.
you have to take action alongside intention. It's not enough to just wish for a better future with AI. We have to actively create it. And meditation, particularly mindfulness, this is one of the tools he gives us.
So he's not just talking about zoning out on a cushion.
No. He sees mindfulness as something we can apply to every aspect of our lives, Like think about your last meal. Did you savor it or did you just consume it?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's
It's about being present in the experience,
Yeah.
not just going through the motions.
He challenges us to bring that mindful awareness to eating, walking, working, even our interactions with technology.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
So less mindless scrolling, more mindful engagement?
Exactly. Yeah. Less mindless scrolling, more mindful engagement. He calls it bringing quality to everything we do.
Okay. Quality. I like that. Because it's not just about efficiency or productivity. It's about something more,
It's about something deeper.
deeper.
Yeah. And that concept of quality, it's key because, it goes beyond just efficiency or productivity. He's talking about like a deeper kind of fulfillment.
Yeah.
One that comes from aligning our actions with our values and
Right.
recognizing the impact of even our smallest choices.
Right. It's about making every action count, making it matter.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we get there?
Well, he lays out a 6-stage process that he calls the dance to consciousness. But to make it a little bit easier, he groups them into 3 movements, M1, M2, and M3.
Okay.
And the first movement, M1, it all focuses on self-knowledge, which, seems like a logical starting point.
Makes sense to me. Before we can improve ourselves or impact the world, we need to understand ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to do that, he introduces this concept of boxes of self.
Boxes of self, what are those?
Yeah, so it's like those, those like comfortable but often limiting patterns that we create for ourselves.
Oh, right, like those little boxes we put ourselves in.
Yeah, exactly. Like they can be helpful, those boxes,
Yeah, sure.
They give us a sense of identity, of security,
Right.
but they can also hold us back, right?
Yeah.
From truly experiencing, the fullness of who we are.
Yeah.
And so to break free from those boxes, Goga encourages us to really delve into what he calls self-feeling.
Self-feeling. Okay. So is that like just being more in touch with our emotions?
Kind of, but it's more than that.
More than that?
Yeah, it's not just about intellectually understanding our emotions, right?
Yeah.
It's about allowing ourselves to fully experience them, like all of them.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly. He even uses that phrase, opening Pandora's box.
Oh, wow. Okay. So he's really encouraging us to go there.
Yeah. To confront those often buried emotions that we tend to avoid, because he's saying that until we can acknowledge and accept them, they're going to continue to kind of hold us back.
It's like that shadow work you hear so much about these days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about bringing those shadows into the light of awareness so we can actually start to heal and grow from them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
And then once we've kind of gone through that process of self-discovery, self-feeling, self-acceptance, then he says we can start practicing de-identification.
De-identification. Okay, now that one sounds a little heady. What does that even mean?
I know, right? It sounds very, very, it's a big word.
It is a big word, yeah.
But essentially, it's about recognizing that we are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are not even our experiences, right?
Okay.
We are the observer.
With a witness to it all.
Yes.
Okay.
Witness to it all. Imagine hitting the rewind button on your life and watching it back, but with a sense of detachment.
Interesting. So instead of getting totally consumed by the emotions of a situation, we can kind of observe them with more objectivity.
Yes, exactly. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond. We don't have to be ruled by our emotions or our past conditioning.
It's about stepping into that space between stimulus and response.
Yes.
And choosing how we want to show up.
Yes, exactly. And that newfound sense of agency, that ability to choose our response, that's incredibly powerful. And it kind of sets the stage for Goga's next movement, M2, self-improvement.
Okay, so we've explored our dance floor. We've started to understand our own steps.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time to refine our technique.
In a way, yeah. But remember, Goga's definition of quality, it goes beyond just adding more skills or achievements to our repertoire.
Right.
It's about bringing more of that intention and awareness to everything we do.
Okay. So how do we actually put that into practice?
Well, he breaks it down into some really practical areas. Like one of them is managing our energy levels.
Energy management. Okay.
Yeah. And I love how relatable he makes this. He talks about these energy drainers we all encounter.
Energy drainers.
Yeah, those people, those places, or those activities that just leave us feeling depleted,
Oh, yeah. We all have those.
We all have those, right? And then on the flip side, he talks about energy fillers. So those are the things that energize us, that inspire us.
Okay, so it's about being mindful of what we allow to impact our energy.
Exactly. It's such a simple concept, but it's so powerful when you actually start paying attention to it. Like, think about your own life,
Yeah.
What are your energy drainers? What are your energy fillers? And once you start paying attention, you can make conscious choices to minimize those drainers and maximize the fillers.
Or becoming the manager of our own energy.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Making conscious choices about where we invest our time and attention. And then another key aspect of self-improvement that he emphasizes is aligning our actions with our values.
Our values.
He argues that true fulfillment doesn't come from chasing, external validation.
Right.
It comes from living in integrity with our core beliefs.
So walking the talk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And to help us make decisions that are actually aligned with our values, he introduces this really, I think, useful framework. It's called the triple win approach.
Triple win.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. Tell me more.
Okay, so whenever you're faced with a decision,
Yeah.
right, big or small, he suggests asking yourself 3 questions.
Okay.
Number 1, how will this decision impact me?
Okay.
Number 2, how will it impact those around me?
Okay.
And number 3, how will it impact the wider world?
Wow. I like that. It's taking a step back and considering the ripple effect of our choices.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond that, self-centered thinking.
Yeah.
And recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Yeah. And that our actions have consequences.
Yes.
Not just for ourselves, but for the world around us.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final movement in Goga's Dance to Consciousness, which is M3, spreading. And this is where things get really interesting, I think, because he moves beyond just individual transformation and starts exploring how we can actually impact the collective.
So how do we take all this good work we've done on ourselves and expand it outward?
Yeah, how do we share that with others? How do we expand our impact beyond just ourselves? And to explain this, he uses this fascinating analogy.
Okay, I love a good analogy. Hit me.
Okay, so imagine each of us has this set of arrows, right?
Okay.
Arrows,
Yep.
and these arrows represent our individual qualities, things like, our attention, our intention, our actions.
Okay.
And depending on how those arrows align or don't align, they can either amplify the collective energy or they can create friction and resistance.
So if everyone's arrows are pointing in different directions, it's just chaos.
It's just chaos.
Right.
But if we can find a way to align those arrows, to move together with a shared intention,
That's when real change happens.
that's when real change happens. He calls it conscious aggregation,
Conscious aggregation.
where individuals come together to form a more conscious and impactful whole.
Interesting.
It's the difference between a group of dancers stumbling around a stage and a perfectly synchronized ballet.
Beautiful analogy. But let's be real. Aligning those arrows in the real world is no easy feat.
You're telling me
Right. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to actually do it.
it takes work.
Right.
Yeah.
We all have our own stuff, our own baggage, our own,
Our own agendas.
Exactly.
Well,
So
well,
how do
no.
you overcome that?
Well, and Goga acknowledges that.
Yeah.
He talks about the importance of what he calls reversion.
Reversion.
These pressures, both internal and external, that try to pull us back into those old ways of being, right? We step off our meditation cushions, we're feeling all aligned and zen.
Right.
And then, bam, real life hits us with its to-do lists and its deadlines and its difficult conversations.
Exactly. And it's so easy to fall back into those old patterns, to let those arrows get all jumbled up again.
Yep. Totally. So that's why he emphasizes the importance of building resilience, creating support systems,
Yes, surrounding ourselves with people who get it.
Exactly. And being mindful of the information and influences that we're allowing into our lives, right?
So it's about creating a life that supports our conscious evolution.
Exactly.
I like that.
Creating a life that supports our conscious evolution. which is no small feat.
No, it's a dance, right? A lifelong dance.
It is a lifelong dance.
And speaking of which, it seems like we've just finished the first movement.
We have.
So where does this dance take us next?
Yeah, so we left off talking about M2, self-improvement.
Right. Bringing more quality to how we actually live our lives, not just, adding more to-dos to our lists.
Right. It's not about becoming superhuman. It's about being more intentional with what we're already doing. Totally. And one of the things that really struck me in this section was Goga's emphasis on how we manage our energy.
Oh, yeah. He talks about that in the book, doesn't he?
He does, and he uses this really cool analogy of arrows. Each of us has these arrows that represent our attention, our intention, our actions.
Okay, so how do the arrows tie into energy management?
Well, he's saying that depending on how we align those arrows, they can either amplify our energy or drain it.
So it's like if we're constantly focusing our arrows on things that drain us, like negativity or busy work or just things that don't really light us up.
Exactly. Then our energy gets depleted. We feel exhausted.
But if we can consciously direct our arrows toward things that energize us, things that inspire us or bring us joy or fill us with a sense of purpose.
Then our energy expands, right?
Exactly. We feel more alive, more engaged, more capable.
And it's not just about finding more time for hobbies or self-care, although those things are important.
Right.
It's about bringing that mindful awareness to everything we do.
So even if we're stuck doing something that we don't necessarily love, let's say answering emails or doing the dishes.
Right.
We can still approach it with a certain quality of attention, a certain level of presence.
Yes. And that's where Goga's idea of self-leadership comes in.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
So he's basically saying that we have to become the CEOs of our own energy. We have to make conscious choices about where we're investing our time and attention, what we're allowing to influence us.
So it's like being really discerning about what we allow into our energy field.
Exactly. And not being afraid to set boundaries.
Boundaries are huge.
They are, because it's so easy to get caught up in other people's agendas or expectations or just the general busyness of life.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
But when we step into that place of self-leadership, we're basically saying, you know what? My energy is precious, and I'm going to protect it.
I love that, protecting our energy.
Yeah, because when we protect our energy, we're not just doing it for ourselves.
Right.
We're doing it for everyone around us, too. Because when our energy is depleted, we're not showing up as our best selves.
We don't have as much to give.
Exactly. And that's where that ripple effect comes in, that Goga talks about so much.
Oh, right, because our energy impacts everyone we come into contact with.
Precisely so. If we want to create positive change in the world, if we want to spread that conscious awareness that we've been cultivating,
we have to start by managing our own energy.
Exactly. We have to make sure our own cups are full, so to speak.
I like that.
So that we can then overflow into the world with that same energy and vitality.
It makes sense because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And that's why this whole concept of self-improvement, it's not selfish.
It's essential.
It's essential for creating a better world.
So how does Goga suggest we actually start putting this into practice?
Well, he offers a lot of practical tips and exercises in the book, but one of the things he emphasizes is the importance of aligning our actions with our values.
Okay. Values alignment, that's a big one.
It is, and it can be tricky, because sometimes our values might conflict with our desires or our perceived limitations.
Right. I might value spending more time in nature, but then my job requires me to be in the office 5 days a week.
Exactly. Or I might value financial freedom, but then I'm afraid to take risks or ask for what I'm worth.
So how do we bridge that gap between our values and our actions?
Well, that's where Goga's triple win approach comes in.
Oh, right. We talked about that a little bit earlier.
We did. And it's such a simple but powerful tool. So remember the 3 questions.
Remind me.
Okay. So whenever you're faced with a decision, you ask yourself, how will this decision impact me? How will it impact those around me? And how will it impact the wider world?
Okay, so it's like taking a step back and consider the consequences of our choices from multiple perspectives.
Exactly, and looking for that sweet spot where all 3 win, where it's a win for us, a win for our relationships, and a win for the planet.
I love that it's like finding that place of alignment where our actions are not just self-serving, but also contribute to the greater good.
Exactly. And Goga argues that when we make decisions from this place of triple win thinking, it naturally leads to more ethical and sustainable outcomes.
It makes sense because we're not just operating from a place of scarcity or competition.
Right. We're tapping into that interconnectedness that we talked about earlier.
And recognizing that our well-being is ultimately tied to the well-being of everyone and everything around us.
Right. And recognizing that even our smallest actions can have a ripple effect, you know?
Exactly. It's like that butterfly effect.
Yes.
One small flap of its wings can create a hurricane on the other side of the world.
Okay, so how do we go from managing our own energy and aligning our arrows to actually creating those ripple effects in the world?
Well, that's where Goga's concept of spreading comes in, and he breaks it down into two main aspects.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the first aspect is what he calls expansion.
Expansion, okay.
And this is about expanding our own consciousness, our own capacity for love and compassion and wisdom.
So it's like inner expansion leading to outer expansion.
Exactly. It's like that saying, as within, so without.
Right.
So we have to cultivate those qualities within ourselves first before we can effectively share them with the world.
That makes sense.
And Goga provides a bunch of practices for doing this, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, spending time in nature.
Yeah, it's like all those things that nourish our souls.
Exactly. And as we expand our own inner landscape, so to speak,
Yeah.
it naturally starts to overflow into the world around us.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So what's the second aspect of spreading?
The second aspect is where things get really interesting. Goga calls this hierarchical inversion.
Hierarchical inversion. Okay, that sounds a little intense.
I know, right? It sounds very official, but it's actually a really beautiful concept.
Okay, so tell me more. What's all about?
Well, essentially, it's about turning the traditional power structures upside down.
Okay, so instead of power being concentrated at the top of the hierarchy?
It's distributed more evenly, and it flows from a place of service rather than dominance.
So it's like leaders becoming more like servants.
Exactly. Or maybe even better yet, leaders becoming facilitators.
Facilitators of what?
Facilitators of growth and transformation, both for themselves and for those they lead.
Okay, so how does that actually work in practice? I mean, it sounds great in theory, but can you give me some concrete examples?
Sure. So let's take the example of a CEO of a company. Traditionally, we might think of a CEO as being at the very top of the hierarchy, making all the decisions and calling all the shots. But with hierarchical inversion, the CEO would instead see their role as serving the needs of their employees, their customers, and the wider community.
So they're not just focused on profits and bottom lines.
Right. They're also focused on creating a work environment that is fulfilling and meaningful for everyone involved.
Okay, I like that. So it's about creating a more collaborative and holistic approach to leadership.
Exactly. And Goga argues that this kind of leadership is not just more ethical.
It's also more effective.
Exactly. Because when people feel seen and heard and valued, they're more likely to be engaged and productive.
Right. It's like that whole idea of servant leadership,
Exactly.
whereby empowering others, you actually end up achieving more as a team.
Precisely. And Goga takes this idea even further by suggesting that this principle of hierarchical inversion can be applied to all areas of life, not just business.
Okay, so how would that look like in, say, our personal relationships?
Well, it could look like letting go of the need to be right all the time.
Okay.
Being willing to listen to our loved ones' perspectives, even if we don't agree with them.
Right, putting the relationship above our own egos.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also look like being of service to our communities, volunteering our time or resources to support causes we believe in.
So it's about shifting our focus from what's in it for me to how can I be of service?
Precisely. And Goga believes that this shift in perspective, this hierarchical inversion, is essential for creating a more just and compassionate world.
Okay, so how do we actually start making this shift? I mean, it's one thing to talk about it, but how do we actually embody these principles in our daily lives?
Well, Goga offers a lot of practical advice in the book. But one of the simplest yet most powerful practices he suggests is simply asking ourselves this question: how can I be of service today?
How can I be of service today? I love that it's such a simple question, but it can really shift our perspective.
Right. It takes our focus off of ourselves and our own needs and puts it on others.
And it doesn't have to be some grand gesture, you know?
Exactly. It could be something as simple as smiling at a stranger, holding the door open for someone offering a listening ear to a friend who's going through a tough time.
Or even just, doing the dishes without being asked.
Exactly. It's about finding those little opportunities in our everyday lives to be of service.
Because ultimately those small acts of kindness, those moments of connection, they all add up. And they create those ripple effects that Goga talks about, those waves of positive change that can spread far and wide.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we are all connected and that our actions, however small, have the power to make a difference.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Carlos Goga's Dancing Our Way to Human AI Consciousness, I think the biggest takeaway for me is this idea that we're not just passive bystanders in this rapidly changing world.
We are active participants in this dance of life.
We are, and we have a choice to make. We can either get swept up in the chaos, or we can choose to become conscious creators to dance our way to a more beautiful and harmonious world.
And that dance, it starts with each and every one of us.
So listeners, I'll leave you with this question. What step will you take today to join the dance?